ॐ ब्रह्मानन्दं परमसुखदं केवलं ज्ञानमूर्तिं द्वन्द्वातीतं गगनसदृशं तत्त्वमस्यादिलक्ष्यम् एकं नित्यं विमलमचलं सर्वधी साक्षिभूतं भावातीतं त्रिगुणरहितं सद्गुरुं तं नमामि। ॐ सदाशिवसमारम्भां शङ्कराचार्यमध्यमाम् अस्मदाचार्यपर्यन्तां वन्दे गुरुपरम्परां श्रुतिस्मृतिपुराणानाम् आलयं करुणालयं नमामि भगवत्पाद शङ्करं लोकशङ्करं शङ्करं शङ्कराचार्यं केशवं बादरायणं सूत्रभाष्यकृतौ वन्दे भगवन्तौ पुनः पुनः। ॐ समस्तजनकल्याणे निरतं करुणामयं नमामि चिन्मयं देवं सद्गुरुं ब्रह्मविद्वरं सद्गुरुं ब्रह्मविद्वरम्। ॐ सहना भवतु सहनौ भुनक्तु सह वीर्यं करवावहै तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै। ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः। हरिः ॐ श्री गुरुभ्यो नमः। हरिः ॐ। सर्ववेदान्त सिद्धान्त गोचरं तमगोचरं गोविन्दं परमानन्दं सद्गुरुं प्रणतोऽस्म्यहम्। We have started studying the teaching of the Guru. We saw that the disciple, having understood that there is no permanent happiness in the world, has approached the Guru and asked his 7 questions. And the Guru is now starting with the Sadhana Chatushtaya, which means the qualifications, the pre-qualifications required for a spiritual seeker to walk this path. And the first requirement is Viveka, which is discrimination. And there are many definitions, many meanings of layers or rungs of the ladder of Viveka. But the highest definition of Viveka is given by Bhagavan Shankaracharya is Nitya Anitya Viveka. Nitya Anitya also means Sat, Asat, permanent, impermanent, permanent, ephemeral, self, not self. So this is the highest definition. And now to discriminate between two things, we have to know both those things. How will I discriminate? If I have never seen lentil before, and if I'm given a mixture even of rice and lentil, but I don't know what lentil is and what rice is, how do I separate it? So the idea is to know both, and then the separation becomes easy. Also, we have to know the not self to know why should I discard it? Why should I discriminate? So I have to know what the not self is, how it is different from the self, and then I will have that viveka, the discrimination, to let go of one. And that is why the Guru has now started with the definition of the not self. And the first thing that falls in the not self is the gross body. I told you that, of course, the entire world falls under not self, but we are really not worried about anything in the world because nobody ever thinks that I am the objects of the world. Thank God. But everybody, all of us think that I am the body. So that's why we start from that point, from the body itself. And so the gross body has to be described first. And first, literally in 72, we saw last time, a physical description of the body is given. So we all know that. We don't need a spiritual teacher to tell us. We know that our body is made out of skin, everybody's body, not just humans, but animal body also. And I'm sure the plants also have layers of skin, etc., in their own way. So there is skin, epidermis, dermis, bone, marrow, blood, etc., etc. And then this body is taken to be me. That is the problem. Body itself is not a problem because body is inert. What can an inert object, what problem can an inert body cause? The inert body does not cause problem. It is my identification with it that is the problem. That has to be remembered. Now we have to know how this gross body has come about. Why are you calling it the not self? Why are you calling it inert? What is the reason? So that's why the source of the gross body is given, and the source is given as the 5 elements. And I told you that if we look at our own body, we know that these 5 elements are there. Because what is the proof? How do you know that they came? Look at your own body. Look at the effect. Your body has water. Your body has earth in the form of smell. Your body has heat, that is fire. Your body has air, pranas, and then there is space. So there's space within the body, and the body occupies space as well. So all these 5 elements are there. We also know that not even all 5. One element leaves the body cannot survive. Water is gone, body cannot survive. Heat is gone, body cannot survive. So even one element will do that much damage. What about all the 5? So that is why this source has been told that these are the 5 elements. Now the 5 elements are inert. That part we can understand very well. Also the part we can understand, if we are asked, are you space, are you water, are you air, we'll say no, because no, I'm not that. That I can understand is different from me, but a combination of all that is me. That is the delusion. So this whole combination is me, but individually I'm not space, I'm not air. That I can understand. Now, how did this body come about is given in this theory of Panchikarana. Panchikarana is there are the 5 elements, which in subtle form, they are first in subtle form, and they grossify by dividing themselves. So first there are 2 halves, and then one half remains intact, and the other half gets divided into 4 parts, and those 4 parts go and merge with the other 4 elements. I gave you the example for potluck, right? So that should be easy to understand. And we have this picture here, which is telling us that each 1/8 goes and mixes with the others. And this is how the grossification happens. And from those grossified elements, this gross body has come about. And that's why it is known as gross body, because, excuse me, they have come from the grossification of the 5 subtle elements. And then the guru is explaining is that the thoughtless ones, who are bound by the sense objects, and the reason they're bound by the sense objects is because of the body, because the body needs all these sense objects, and now I think I'm the body, and so I need all these things, and the one who doesn't think gets bound. Delusion is first, bondage is later. The delusion is wrong thinking, and wrong thinking is to think that I am the body. So that basic wrong thinking is there, incorrect thinking is there, and then I'm getting attached to all these objects, and that is what is causing bondage. He gives an example of the 5 various animals, insects, elephant, deer, bee, etc. Each one is only attached to one sense object. I told you there are 5 sense objects only, means all the objects in this world fall under the 5 categories: Rupa, Rasa, Gandha, Sparsha, and then touch. Form, color and form, sound, smell, taste, and touch. So that is it. These are the 5 objects only. We think there are millions of objects. These are the 5. Even if an element, the elephant or animal is attached to one, he goes to his destruction. Now with humans, we are attached to all 5. Something or the other, we like things to watch, we like things to hear, we like things to eat. We get attached and we get Therefore, we get bound. So Bhagavan Shankaracharya says, one sense object, one attachment to one sense object can cause your destruction. What to talk about all 5 objects? If you get attached to all 5, then what is going to be your fate? And so we completed 77, where he says that these sense objects are even more venomous than a cobra poison, because the cobra poison kills you only once. It'll bite you and you'll die, and that would be the end. But these objects keep killing you every time, because the objects are coming again and again in waves, and we are getting attached and we are getting miserable. And so they are even worse than the bite of the cobra. So we move on to verse 78. Is there any doubts or questions up to this portion? Everybody is okay? All right, so we'll move further. Vishayasham mahapashadyo vimukta sudustyajat sa eva kalpate muktai nanya shat shastra vedyapi. He who has liberated himself from the terrible bonds of desires for sense objects, indeed very difficult to renounce, is alone fit for liberation. None else, even if he is well versed in all the 6 schools of philosophy. So we have seen this idea before. Well versed in the 6 schools of philosophy means he's an erudite scholar. Who would be well versed in all 6 schools? Means anyone who is he's an erudite scholar. He's a scholar. He's a scholarly person. But being scholarly does not guarantee you liberation if you're still attached to the sense objects. That's why education by itself is not a prerequisite for spiritual seeking. It doesn't see the Shat Sampatti, the Sadhana Chatushtaya, which is there, Viveka, Vairagya, Shat Sampatti, and Mumukshutvam, is not talking about any kind of educational qualification. It is talking about states of the mind. So it doesn't matter whether you have a PhD or you don't have a PhD, you have a degree or you don't have a degree. It depends on the purity of your mind. And that purity can be gained by anyone, whether uneducated, educated, graduate, non-graduate, illiterate. That's why we see people like Nisargadatta Maharaj, who couldn't even basically talk pure Marathi, is liberated. Because it's the mind that is taking you there, not your educational. This is what he's saying here. So you may be well versed in the 6 schools. You may be having a doctorate, having a degree. What is required is the freedom from the sense objects. And freedom from the sense objects doesn't mean physically renouncing them. They have to be renounced in the mind. Okay, and so in the mind there should not be an attachment. That does not mean that Vedanta is telling us not to enjoy the objects, because that is where people think, Vedanta, what is this? That means I can't enjoy a movie, I can't enjoy TV, I can't enjoy anything. No, you can enjoy whatever that you want to enjoy. Don't get attached to it. And what it means by saying not getting attached is, you must not think that your life is worthless without this, because that's what we think. We all go through that at a young age. We think what is life without this? What is life without that? I have to have that. I have to have that. That is what attachment is. And that should be given up. So one of the spiritual practices is you enjoy the moment, or you even suffer the moment, experience. So if I use the word experience, it includes both enjoyment and suffering. So you experience the moment and drop it. What we do is we cannot drop the joys. We carry it in our mind. Oh, I enjoyed this so much. When is it going to come again? And even the sorrow we cannot drop. So we carry the sorrow also in our mind. And that is what attachment is. It's in the mind. There's nothing outside. So this as long as that attachment is there to sense objects, Bhagavan is saying liberation is not possible. It is like you are tied to these. And Bhagavad Gita calls it Asha Pasha. Pasha is time. it's bound, right? We are bound by what? By hopes. Asha is hopes. So we are bound by the hope of pleasure. Oh, I will get pleasure. The best example is, if you, anyone who has been to Las Vegas, you know, you are in that casino and you are playing the machines, and some of the other machine is giving out the coins, and there is this sound of coins, and you think, oh my god, next thing is going to be mine, next pull of the handle is going to give me money, and that's what keeps you going. So this is what is happening. Unless we give that up, liberation is not possible. We will be always bound to it. We are tied, not physically tied, but mentally we are tied to it. आपातवैराग्यवतो मुमुक्षून् भवाब्धिपारं प्रतियातुमुद्यतान् आशाग्रहो मज्जयतेऽन्तराले निगृह्य कंठे विनिवर्त्य वेगात्. Those who have only an apparent dispassion and are trying to cross the ocean of change are caught by their throats by the shark of desire, which violently dragging them along drowns them in the middle of the ocean. So apparent dispassion, I told you, apparent dispassion is known as smashan vairagya. You know, there's a term called smashan vairagya. Smashan vairagya means when there is a death in the family. Smashan is a cremation ground, Hindi, Marathi. So what happens is there is a death in the family, and then of course the person is going through grief, and then suddenly he gets very dispassionate. So this is an apparent dispassion because it is not real, it is not going to stick. So as days go by, the sorrow reduces. Every sorrow, every experience cannot remain of the same intensity no matter what it is. It may be the happiest moment of your life, or it may be the saddest moment of your life. Because it belongs to the not self, because it is impermanent, that intensity will reduce, and there will be a point when it will go to zero. So even the happiness will reduce, the sorrow, the intensity of the sorrow will also reduce, and there will be a point when they will go to zero. In the meanwhile, there are these other experiences that are giving me joy and sorrow. In this case, this apparent dispassion has come because of some sort of sorrow that I have undergone. It is not come out of knowledge. That is the idea. Apparent. The real dispassion, which will stick with us, which will remain with us, which will stay with us, is only through knowledge. And that knowledge is given by Viveka, the discrimination. If we have that discriminating faculty, that this is the not self, see, we need not reject it. But what I should know is that, okay, this thing has happened in my life. I have experienced joy or I have experienced sorrow. There are only two things. Or if I'm neutral, then no problem. I have experienced. I must remember that this is not permanent. That's all. We forget. We think it's very difficult. We just somehow think that, okay, this is now permanent. I'm going to be permanently here, or anything like that. And that part, if we can keep in mind constantly that this is going to change. Okay, I had a great happiness in this experience. Remember, it is going to change. So let me enjoy it, and then it's okay. Or I had this sorrow. I had this great sorrow that I went through. That also is impermanent. So if I can remember that, because not self is that which is changing constantly. And we think that things are not going to change in our life. I don't know what it is, but it is like that. But like Gurudev has said, change is the only changeless law of life. There is nothing that is changeless other than the self. And there is only one self. That's it. Everything else, if you can remember Gurudev's that chart, BMI chart, there is Om, and then there is the V for Vasanas, and then so if V, and underneath it, whatever there is not changing, is changing, constantly changing. We may not see the change, but it is happening. Our own body is changing, like moment to moment to moment, body is changing. Of course, I don't see it externally, but internally so many cells have died and so many cells have been born. But I don't see it. So I think, oh, this is permanent. You know, I'm going to remain like this. There are many people who tell me, I don't feel old inside. They don't understand that the reason they don't feel old inside is because inside you're not old. You are eternal. But they don't have the Vedantic background. What should be our understanding is that I am eternal, no problem, but my body is not going to be able to do the same things that it was able to do 10 years ago or 20 years ago or 50 or 5 years ago. You know, as the age advances, last year also what I could do, I cannot probably do now. So that part, if it is known out of knowledge, then there will be no sorrow. What can you do? The body is like that. It is going to change. Okay, accept it. The more acceptance there is, the less sorrow there will be. People have a hard time accepting that they are getting old. They say, you know, I'm getting old. No, you are not getting old. Body is getting old. And then there is nothing to feel sad about it, because you tell me which body among your friends has not gotten old. Which body has? Is there anybody who has not gotten old? They may be in better health or better shape than you, or worse, whatever, but everybody is getting old anyways. Okay, so this is what he's saying here. If that dispassion has arisen out of some great sorrow, then it is like throats by sharks of desire. The desire is going to come and catch you anytime, because the dispassion is not going to last. And that's why we recommend, Vedanta recommends that your dispassion arise out of knowledge. And what knowledge is that? That is viveka, the discrimination. And that's why that comes first. Before vairagya comes viveka. Unless you discriminate, how will you discard the not self? We didn't even know, even we, you know, before coming into this Vedanta, even we didn't know self, not self, and all those things we didn't know. Now that we know, now we should be careful after this. विषयाखग्रहो येन सुविरक्त्यसि नाहतः स गच्छति भवां बोधेः पारं प्रत्युहवर्जितः. He who has destroyed the shark called sense objects with the sword of mature dispassion crosses the ocean of samsara unobstructed. In chapter 15, Bhagwan will say, Bhagwan has said, not will say, Bhagwan has said, Asanga shastrena dridena chitva. Asanga shastrena, shastra weapon. By the weapon of asangata, asangata detachment, dridena chitva, firmly kill. Chitva is destroy, kill, cut asunder. And what is that? This attachment to sense objects. So this Shastra word, Shastra means a weapon which is held in your hand. There are two words, Astra and Shastra in Sanskrit. Astra is also a weapon, Shastra is also a weapon. Astra is something that you throw. So arrow goes out of your hand, or in the modern, this thing, what do they have? These little bombs, I forget the name. You take the pin out and you throw it. That army will, throw to have an explosion. So what is happening is that weapon is leaving your hand. But then there is a weapon like the sword or the spear. Spear also leaves, you have to throw. Sword is the one which you will always hold in your hand. And by saying Asanga Shastra, he's saying that this weapon of detachment you must constantly hold in your hand. It should be in your, it's of course literally hand, but mind. In your mind, there should be a constant detachment. So with that weapon of detachment, you need to negate the not self all the time. And by negating, once again, I'm repeating, please do not think that we are not, Vedanta is asking us, oh, don't enjoy this, don't enjoy that. We are not asking you not to, you enjoy, don't get attached. Don't get it. Don't think it is real. Don't think it is permanent, and don't get attached to it. Don't run towards it. Don't keep wondering, when is it going to happen again? When is it going to happen again? Don't. That is what. That's why constant remembrance, constant holding on to this weapon of asangata. So here he says that because he has used the word shark in the previous this thing, he says the shark called sense objects means not physically, you don't destroy the object. Okay, in your mind you cut off the attachment. That is what he's saying. Sa gachati bhavam bodehe. So this bhava, is ocean. This sansar is known as ocean because the ocean is deep, very deep, and apara. These are the two similarities. Apara means you cannot see the boundary. You go on the beach, you cannot see the other end of the ocean. So this sansara is like that. And sansara, samsarati iti sansara, that which changes. So this samsara, there is a world, there is a creation, and the samsara is caused, samsara, okay? World is there, creation is there, there is no problem with the creation. If you see, if you just look at nature, sun is rising every day, wind is blowing, seasons are changing, there's no problem. The minute I associate with them, the minute I identify with that world, I create a sansara for myself. And that sansara, that is need, you need not destroy the world. Physically, the world can never be destroyed. You can never destroy. No need to destroy the body either physically. Okay, that is not solving any problem. So keeping the body, let the world be there. You don't associate with the body or the world. And the first association is with the body, and then it is with the world. So that's why we are talking more about the body. So such a person who has this Asanga Shastra in his hand, who has this weapon of detachment, a weapon of Vairagya, can cross over this sansara, okay, and reach the other shore, which is liberation. Vishama Vishaya Margaihi Gachato Nacha Buddhehe Prati Padamabhiyato Mrityurapesha Vidhi Hita Sujana Guruktya Gachata Swasya Yuktya Prabhavati Falasiddhihi Satyamitteva Vidhi. Know that mortality soon overtakes a foolish man who walks the dangerous path of sense pleasures. Whereas one who sticks in the path of divinity, according to the instructions of well-meaning and noble gurus, constantly walks the path divine, helped by his own reasoning faculty. He achieves the end. Know for certain this is true. This is what I have always told you, Shreya Preya Viveka. So this is where you start. So Shreya is that which is good for you, and prayer is that which is pleasing to the senses. Prayer is that which gives you pleasures because of the senses. Prayer is that which gives you pleasure when the sense organ comes in contact with its respective sense object. So when the eyes come in contact with color and form, they feel very pleased. Ears with sound, tongue with taste, nose with smell. So when that contact is there, then this happiness is gained. If that contact is broken for whatever reason, maybe that object might go away, or the person might go blind, or he might go deaf, or he might not be able to smell anything. I know people who have had surgeries on the brain and they cannot smell anything anymore. So if you are attached to that object, and if something goes wrong with the sense organ, then that pleasure is gone. And Shreya also is that one where there is immediate pleasure, but later on there is sorrow. So I like something, so I overeat, and then next day I either have an upset stomach, or my blood sugar has risen because I ate too much sweets, whatever. So prayer is that which is good in the beginning, but bitter in the end. In the end is bitter. Whereas with Shreya, this is prayer. Shreya is bitter in the beginning, but better in the end. Because this Shreya is not depending on the sense objects. Shreya is what is good for me. It doesn't depend on sense pleasures. It depends on the intellect. So when I have two choices, which I always have choice in life, do I overeat or I don't eat? So overeat is prayer because I like this thing. So why don't I just eat a little bit more? And what is good is being told by the intellect, saying, no, 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 don't go for the taste. If you overeat, you're going to get an upset stomach. So Shreya is that which is good, which is driven by the intellect. And prayer is that which is good in the beginning, but not later, and is driven by the senses. So that's the discrimination that we are talking about here. So mortality soon overtakes a foolish man who walks the dangerous path of sense pleasures. He's walking the path of prayer. He's walking the path of prayer. So what he actually, my mom had a friend. I mean, he was our friend too, but he was like my mom's age. Anyway, so in India, he's passed on now. So he had diabetes, high diabetes, and I was in India in my mom's house, and I remembered this when he came to our house and he said, I am going to eat jam every day. The doctor, he literally in front of me, he has said this, huh? The doctor can increase my medication. I don't care. I will not give up my jam for breakfast every single day. With that force, prayer, sense organ. And then he suffered a lot before he passed on. But that means the intellect is not at play at all. What is at play is his tongue. Like, I cannot live without jam. I don't care if I have diabetes. My doctor can go on increasing the medication as much as he wants. I am not giving up jam. That is prayer. But if the intellect were to be brought in, the intellect is going to say, no, you are going to suffer later on. So that is the difference. So this is what is meant here. So he's a foolish man. He was very highly educated, this person. He was a linguist. Languages came very, very easily to him. So he was, all the government contracts he would get, because, when there was a language difference, when the Indian government was dealing with the French government or Spanish government, he knew, God knows, Arabic and Farsi and kind of all languages in the world. That highly educated he was, but he could not give up his jam in spite of having high diabetes. This is, I'm telling you, I've seen this. There are people like this. It's amazing. Where there is absolute intellect is not brought into the picture at all, even though he was very intelligent. But then Bhagwan Shankaracharya calls such a person a foolish man. He's a foolish man. So that's why he says, walks the dangerous path of sense pleasures. For the pleasure of just tongue. One, we saw that, one pleasure, lot of suffering. I mean, everybody dies, everybody has to die, but the amount of suffering that a person has to go through, that is what we must, at least for that reason, we must try and avoid and bring our intellect into the picture. Death, you cannot avoid. No matter what divine path you walk, death to the body is unavoidable. But whether it will be a peaceful death or a very suffering and then death, that choice we have. And that's why here it says, one who sticks to the path of divinity, and divinity at our level is just Shreya, just what is good for me. Bring your intellect into the picture, always. And because there is a choice, always. Don't ever think that, oh, I had no choice. I had to do this. I had to eat that. I had to. No, you can say no. You can say no. Right? When people are forcing you to do something, or, peer pressure in school. That's what we teach Bal Vihar children. Say no to drugs. You must have the strength to say no to certain things. Certain things are wrong. They're wrong. They should not be done. So this is what it is. So by his own reasoning faculty belongs to the intellect. It is not at the level of the mind. So that's why a person who is walking the path with the intellect, he's doing Shreya Prayer Vivek. And Bhagwan is saying we must all, at least 80% of the times, do Shreya, and 20%, because it's suddenly to go into complete Shreya is difficult. I can understand that, but at least follow the 80-20 rule. That is the rule they tell in when people are trying to lose weight. 80% of the times you eat healthy, 20% you let the mind go. Okay, so at least if we can do that, I mean, if we can do 100% prayer, Shreya, hey, nothing like it, but it's hard. It's hard. Okay. So that's what it is. Now, Mokshasya kangsha yadi vaitavasti त्यजाति दूराद् विषयन् विषं यथा पीयूषवेत्तोषधयाक्षमार्जवः प्रशान्ति दान्तिर्भज नित्यमादरात्. If you have indeed a craving for liberation, mumukshutvam, avoid sense objects from a distance, just as you avoid things known to be poisonous, and with respectful reverence, daily cultivate the nectarine virtues, contentment, forgiveness, straightforwardness, calmness, and self-control. So we can start, this is the start, you know. So if, but there is a big if, it starts with an if, which I have always said in my lectures, there's a big if you want to try for that moksha, because some people might feel it's okay, I don't want moksha, I don't mind getting birth after birth after birth, then it's okay, then there's nothing that I can say. But this is what Bhagwan is saying, that if you know, even you shouldn't think of moksha as something great, liberation, etc., etc. Even if you want peace of mind, who here will say, I don't want peace of mind? Just basic. Even if you want peace of mind, see how good you feel when you do the right thing. When you do the right thing. And remember that feeling. There are times, you know, when we get tempted, and that is one thing that has helped me also in my sadhana, is what I try and do is, if I'm getting tempted to buy something, you know, food wise, that I shouldn't be eating, there are lots of things that I shouldn't be eating, then I try and remember how good I felt when the last time I resisted that desire. Because think about it, if you resist a desire which is not conducive to your health, okay, because we're not even talking liberation or anything, but just my health, like, you know, that I shouldn't be eating too much sweets, or I shouldn't be eating something, you feel good. You feel good about it. So if you remember that good feeling, or even exercise, I feel good when I have done my daily exercise. There is a routine that I follow. So when I follow that routine, I feel good. I feel like I've had a successful day. And so that feeling I remember, and that's what carries me through the next day. Next day when I feel, maybe it's raining and I should just, you know, lie in bed, and then I say, no, you know, see how good you felt when you walked yesterday. You better get up and walk for that feeling. So whatever works for you, try it. And that's why, means even moksha, I'm not saying, even if you want peace of mind, if you want that good feeling, if you want to experience that good feeling, can anyone say that if you've done the right thing, you felt bad after that? If you have done the right thing, if you have resisted the right kind of food which you're not supposed to eat, if you have done the exercise that you decided, your discipline, if you had decided to, say, maybe read a couple of verses and you did that, how do you feel? And if you didn't do that, then how do you feel? Right? So remember that feeling. I felt so good when I followed my discipline, when I, you know, follow. And then even when you go out and enjoy, you have a good feeling about yourself. You have peace. Oh, since morning, I did my walk, I did my reading, I did my, you know, lecture, I did my preparation for my lecture, and then I went out for lunch. Then I feel good. I'm ready. So remember that. So don't think that, oh, moksha's, don't think that much further. So he says you have to keep away from the sense objects because they'll make you fall. See, when you are going against your vasanas, now it's very difficult. It's like climbing a mountain, you know, like you go up, it is very difficult, but how easily you can come down. So you're resisting. So what happens is when you don't maintain that distance from the sense objects, and distance is in your mind, like when you don't have that willpower, then you will fall. And that's why he says that keep things known to be poisonous, means not physically poisonous, but poisonous for my spiritual growth. these sense objects, if I indulge in them, they will be an obstacle in my spiritual growth because they will pull me towards them. It's, you know, if you have had friends who were smokers, so you go for, lunch or tea or coffee with them and they're having a cigarette. And if you keeping that company, there will be a time when you will feel like smoking. Do you agree? Do you agree? Yeah. Yeah. No, you don't agree. Darshan doesn't agree. Try it. And I'll tell you why I say. I had a friend when I was working a long time back. She was a smoker. And we would go out for movies, lunch, dinner, whatever. And she would smoke and I was okay. But one day, honest, this is the God honest truth. One day I said to her, okay, Trish, give me a cigarette. I want to smoke. But she was a real friend, a good friend. And she immediately put out her cigarette. She goes, no way, Jaya, you're not even going to smoke one cigarette. Because company, see, why we say keep satsang? Because that company will improve you, na? When you are with like-minded people, you will. But if you're constantly with people who are smoking and you're inhaling that smoke, you will feel like smoking, or they will make you do it because they don't want somebody like that, right? So that is why you maintain your distance. Once you are established and once you're on the path, that is another thing. When you do not sort of take interest in the news and what's happening and politics and all, then people also tend to like drop you. That also is there, which is good, so if there is enough dispassion, you don't feel bad. You're like, okay, I don't know, I don't listen to the news, so I don't want to be discussing politics with you. That's the last thing I want to do, right? So stay away from that sort of company, because there are chances that you will fall unless you're very well established in the knowledge. Then that is a different matter. So that's why he's saying that, and with respectful reverence, daily cultivate the nectarine with contentment. So be happy with whatever that you have. Contentment is a state of the mind. All these are states of mind. So contentment is not being rich, not having like a whole bunch of things, but contentment is being happy in whatever that you have. So whatever that you have, you feel, oh my God, I have so much. That is contentment. So you may be living in a small house, one bedroom apartment, but you're like, oh my God, like I have a bedroom to myself. There are so many people who don't even have that. I was sad that I had no shoes until I saw someone who had no feet. You have to look at the person who is below you, and there will be somebody below you. What is happening right now is, if I have a pair of shoes, I'm not looking at the person who doesn't have feet. If I don't have shoes, I'm not looking at that person. I'm looking at the person who has shoes. If I have shoes, I'm looking at the person who's on a bicycle. If I'm on a bicycle, I'm looking at the person in the car. If I'm in a car, I'm looking at the person in the plane. And the person in the plane is worried about his taxes. So he's also worried. So all of us are worried. I'm unhappy because I don't have a bicycle. I'm unhappy because I don't have a car. I don't have a plane. He's worried. So if you look the other way, you will have gratitude for whatever that you have, and that will bring contentment. Gratitude brings contentment. Oh, thank you, Lord, I have a pair of shoes. Thank you, Lord, I can walk. I have a pair of feet. Actually, there was a story that I just heard. Did I hear it in a so one person was asked, how much money do you have, or how much money will make you happy? So this person said, will 1 crore make you happy? Like if I give you 1 crore rupees or whatever? I says, yes, but what would you want in return? He said, give me your eyes. I'll give you 1 crore. He said, no way I'm giving you my eyes. I said, okay, then why don't you give me your hands? Give me your hands. No. Okay, give me your feet. No. So he said, do you realize that how many crores of rupees you have in the body itself? If you're not willing to give your eyes, I'm giving you 1 crore of rupees. Give me your eyes. Give me. No. So we have to understand that we are so rich. Man, we've got, okay, so I'm wearing glasses, so what? I can see through the glasses at least. People feel ashamed that they have to wear glasses. I don't know. Honestly, I know such people also who will not read things in the temple because then people will know that I'm wearing glasses. So they don't read. I know this is not joke. I have encountered such people. So we have to be thankful that we have got a healthy body, how rich we are. That will bring contentment. If we can think like that, it will bring contentment. But what happens? I'm like, or kya body, so what? I don't have a car. The one who has a car, I don't have a Tesla. The one who has a Tesla, oh, but Model X would have been good, you know. There's no happiness only. No, I don't. So contentment will come with that. Think just you are standing on your own 2 feet. You're independent. You can do whatever that you want. Be content. Forgiveness. So forgive yourself first and forgive others, because knowing that each one is behaving as per their vasanas, we have to learn to forgive. This is in chapter 13. Bhagwan gives this as a virtue prerequisite for knowledge, because forgiveness will bring peace of mind. See, when I do not forgive somebody or something, then I am constantly boiling in my mind. He did this to me, she did this to me, now I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that, I'm going to take revenge. What is happening is it is agitating my mind. I am falling. All these virtues are so that your mind remains at peace, because that is the requisite for spiritual emancipation. Now, if my own mind is not at peace, how will I spiritually evolve? I can't. So that is the thought that should be driving these things. Next time when we don't want to forgive, think like this. You know what? If I don't forgive, I'm going to lose my peace of mind and I'm going to fall, and I don't want to fall. Let that person may have done whatever bad that person has done to me. Maybe it's my prarabdha that I had to experience this insult from this person. So if I keep that in mind, that it is my own karmas from the past, my own prarabdha that has brought this experience to me, it has got nothing to do with the person who has actually insulted me, and I don't want to fall. Let that person, so then that is his karma. Let him say something. If I can do that, then forgiveness, and it will give me peace of mind. And of course, there are levels of forgiveness. So the highest is when you don't think that the other person has done wrong, or you can say, okay, you have done wrong, but I forgive you. Or sometimes you don't forgive at all, or you forgive but you don't forget. That is also, that is not complete forgiveness. You say, okay, I forgive you, but every day, but last time you did that and I forgave you, huh? Last time you did that. That is also not complete forgiveness. So forgive and forget, they say, right? We have to be able to forget. We need to let the past go and then move forward. Forgiveness, straightforwardness, arjavam. Arjun, that the name Arjun comes from this arjava. It's rujutvat Arjun, one who was very straightforward. So there is no ulterior motive. Straightforwardness is not having any kind of ulterior motive. So you be honest, you be straightforward. It will, again, if every time you have some sort of ulterior motive and, you know, talking to people, doing, then you're, it's not going to help you in your spiritual evolution. Calmness and self-control. So calmness of mind will come with self-control. So when you have controlled the senses and the mind is under the control of the intellect, when you're bringing your Shreya Praya Vivek, I told you, when you're bringing the intellect constantly into every interaction with the world, then it'll be under control, because the intellect will never guide you wrong. It'll never tell you wrong things. It's like your conscience is the higher mind. So these qualities, remember, they are for our progress. They're not for showing other people how calm I am, how this. No, remember that this is what is going to take me further in my spiritual ability. That, therefore, even this mokshasya, for us, I would translate it only as I want to evolve spiritually. Forget liberation. Okay. So just that much. If we can do that, then it will give us peace of mind. So fascination for body criticized is a new topic that we are starting, that is starting now from 83 onwards. So I'm going to stop here today. Are there any questions? Yeah, go ahead.
I just have a comment to say. At least from my point of view, but as bad as it may sound, the COVID situation, it is helping us all the more to seniors like us to stay home and help us to develop this, all the qualities that you mentioned. It automatically works out for us. And, it's we're so peaceful, all three of us, amazing. And from morning till night, we keep listening to all the like discourses and everything. It's absolutely very wonderful.
Yeah, COVID has had its benefits. I must say that. Um, yeah, I mean, yeah, it has its benefits for me too, because I've had more chance to think. It gives me a chance to just remain, watch my YouTube videos, etc. If nobody has any question, I want to answer Tripti's. Tripti, you had a question in the Vivek Chudamani class, which I answered in the Bhagavad Gita class about Uparati. Are you okay with that, or do you
Yeah,
want to
okay.
elaborate?
No, it's okay.
It's yeah. Basically, Uparati is the question was how do young people not engage as much, right?
Yeah.
So the Uparati definition given is Swadharma Anushtana. Swadharma Anushtana, when you stick to your own duties in life, okay, what happens is it sort of detaches you from other things which are unnecessary. There is no necessity to find out what the neighbor is doing, where he is going, why his car is here, why his car, for me at least, I see car. There is no need where it is not my business. So that is one very, very, there are other ways that will come in Bhagavad Gita. But to begin with, if I sort of apne kaam se kaam rakho, those who understand English, sorry, Hindi, keep to your own, whatever is your duty, you do. Don't worry what is he's not doing. I saw this one talking in the temple. Are Baba, that means what? Your attention was there. Your also attention was not on God. So don't worry about all those other things. You and young people also can do that. That wherever it's concerned, they can engage. They have to engage. Like if they get a call from the child's teacher, then of course they have to engage. It's their child. And if the teacher is calling for something, so wherever it is their duty to engage, you engage. Where it is not your duty, you withdraw. And that will give you practice of disengagement. Okay. Om swasti prajabhya paripalayantam nyayena margena mahim mahishaha go brahmanebhya shubhmastu nityam loka samasta sukhino bhavantu kale varshatu parjanyaha prithvi sasya shalini desho yam kshobarahitah brahmana santu nirbhayaha om sarvesham swasti bhavatu sarvesham shantir bhavatu sarvesham purnam bhavatu sarvesham mangalam bhavatu सर्वे भवन्तु सुखिनः सर्वे सन्तु निरामयाः सर्वे भद्राणि पश्यन्तु मा कश्चित् दुःखभाग् भवेत् ॐ असतो मा सद्गमय तमसो मा ज्योतिर्गमय मृत्यु मा अमृतं गमय ॐ पूर्णमदः पूर्णमिदं पूर्णात् पूर्णमुदच्यते पूर्णस्य पूर्णमादाय पूर्णमेवावशिष्यते ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः हरिः ओम श्री गुरुभ्यो नमः हरिः ओम।